Hi, I'm Hawley for Trainli TV and the Alpine and Western Pacific Railroad here in Reno, Nevada. Now, over the last several years, we've had requests on how do we build our buildings that are out on the railroad that stay out all year round. So we're excited to tell you that over the next several months, we're going to do a little video documentary on building one of these buildings. And it's going to be actually a pretty good sized building, about 7 feet long, about 2 feet wide, and approximately 2 feet tall. So this will be a big model, it'll be a big build, and we're really excited to do this. But before we get into that, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the railroad. Now, when you start out building a railroad, it's a good idea to come up with a theme. A theme helps you kind of keep everything organized and kind of a logical story to your railroad. And I always tell people it's a good idea to, when you're building a railroad, think of it as you're like telling a story. Whether you're replicating a piece in history or a fantasy railroad or anything in between. It really helps convey that message of what you're trying to do with your railroad. Our railroad is called the Alpine and Western Pacific Railroad, and it's modeled after a Swiss mountain alpine type railroad, perhaps running through a resort town or ski resort. The backyard, when we do the backyard, will be modeled after a mainline Western Pacific type railroad. And that will also enable us to, with that theme, perhaps add a narrow gauge railroad or a logging railroad or something like that to the railroad. Now, for the last 2 years or so, we have been working on a brand new division of the Alpine and Western Pacific Railroad called the Tahoe Junction Railroad. The Tahoe Junction Railroad is named after a place where we grew up at near Lake Tahoe, and it was on a very tall, high ridge that you could see all of Lake Tahoe and all of Reno. Matter of fact, it was one of the highest points around the region. And we thought that'd be a fun name to call this station that we're putting in on the top of the Tahoe Junction Division, because it's the highest point around on our property and the highest point that the railroad could reach. Now, I'd like to give you a little bit about the region here. We're almost at 5,000 feet, and we will get a dozen days where the temperature will go over 100 degrees, and we'll get several days in the wintertime where it'll drop below zero. We can get anywhere from several inches to a couple of feet of snow, and that can stick around for just a few days or a month or two. We also get we can get thunderstorms in the summertime, a lot of rain, wind, and snow in the wintertime. And speaking about wind, we can get a lot of wind here. I've recorded wind gusts of over 100 miles an hour here at the house. So it's important to have these buildings be heavy enough to withstand some pretty significant winds. Now, these buildings that we started making really came out of necessity. As your railroad grows, so does the maintenance. Matter of fact, I think the maintenance grows faster than the railroad. And we were spending a lot of time getting ready to run trains versus running trains. And I actually like to run trains. To run our railroad year round, as long as there's not too much snow. And we were taking all of the plastic models buildings in for maintenance, and they certainly could not withstand the wind and the rain and the snow in the wintertime and last for too many years. So it was out of necessity that we decided to start making our own buildings. And we decided just to start using material that you would build actual buildings out of. So we use stone and cement and concrete and wood and glass, all the things that you would typically use in a real house or building we use on our scale buildings. That makes it nice because most of that material you can get from your local home improvement stores. Most of the stuff that we use comes right down the street. We have a Home Depot nearby, so we can go down there, get the majority of our building supplies, and come back and work on these models. So it takes anywhere from about 6 months to a year to build one of these buildings. And they kind of come about one of two ways. One, we'll find an area on the railroad where we need a building or structure, and we'll start looking for something. Most of the buildings on the railroad are copies of real buildings that we've found traveling around the world. We have an adventure tour company that we take people on rail journeys, and we do a lot of them through Switzerland. And while traveling there this last winter on one of our adventures with a ski trip, to one of our most favorite areas is called Wengen, Switzerland, and it's in the Jungfrau region. And it's kind of in the center of Switzerland, right above Interlaken. And there's this beautiful little village way up in the mountains, and the only way you can get to it is by a cog railroad. And then you look down onto the spectacular valley. It's kind of like Yosemite, except on steroids. It's a beautiful place. From there, you take the train up further into the mountains, and you come to this train station called Kleine Scheidegg. And Kleine Scheidegg is on top of this mountain ridge, and so the trains come up from either side, two different valleys, and meet on top of this mountain ridge. Then from there, you transfer to the Jungfrau train that takes you all the way up to the top, which is the highest train station in all of Europe. The Kleine Scheidegg station is, like I said, is long and narrow and fits perfectly to the spot that we want to put it on the Tahoe Junction division, which is also our highest spot on the railroad. So we thought that was a great, neat fit. So our process is we will find a location, find a building that we like, and do a rough measurement. I'll usually just walk down the length of the building and the width of the building, and get some rough dimensions. From there, I'll stand in front of the building, and I'm approximately 5'11". That will give me a good height reference that I can multiply in the pictures. And then if I need a width or something, I can go ahead and hold my hands out like that, and that will give me a reference to how large something is. We'll then go around, take lots of pictures, and take close-ups of some of the details that we want to have. Now, this Kleine Scheidegg building is really quite special. In the front of it, it has a gift shop. Then after that is, kind of in the middle, is a restaurant, and it's a wonderful restaurant. We've eaten there several times, and it's just spectacular. The roasties and the Swiss wines and everything, really a lot of fun. And you look out onto the Jungfrau Glacier on one side, and you look out across the Alps on the other side. So beautiful, spectacular location. And then the end of the building has a ticket office and kind of a little cargo area. And then the next two floors on top is a little hotel. So that fit beautifully into the theme of our railroad as that kind of alpine mountain resort type railroad, and a perfect match with the Kleine Scheidegg station. So after we've taken all the photographs and the rough measurements, the next step is to go ahead and have a CAD drawing made up. And that is our next segment coming up, where we'll go ahead and have an interview with Nico, who's the young man that does all of our CAD drawings for these buildings. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. I'm Hawley McLean for Trainli TV. Thank you.